Welcome back to the Outreach Project family. This is Josh.
This is Zach.
We are joined with...
Brad Miller.
How are you, Brad?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
You want to just start with kind of who you are, what you do?
Sure. Yeah. Sure. So I grew up over in Allen County in Huntertown, and I went to a little Mennonite church. I was raised in a home that really honored Jesus. My mom and dad modeled Jesus well. They weren't perfect, but they modeled Jesus well. And so I accepted Jesus when I was around 7, got baptized, and walked with him until I got to the end of high school and got pretty rebellious, inwardly at first. And that's one of the things that I realized, the inward rebellions definitely started early in high school. And then I got out of high school, and then that inward rebellion began working its way outside and became more visible. My parents did an amazing job of loving me through that. I was still living at home in those early young adult years, and they knew what I was doing, and they did not like it. They did not approve of it. I knew that they didn't approve of it, but they didn't preach to me every time I came home. You know, they weren't just harping on me all the time. They loved me. And so we had a relationship that went outside, that was bigger than my rebellion, if that makes sense. And then a couple years of that, and one night I came home really late, and my mom was still up. She was still up, and she was sitting in a chair. I'm like, that's not supposed to happen. You're not supposed to be there. You're supposed to be in bed. And she didn't preach. She didn't nag me. She just asked me if I would go read a couple Bible verses. And it was about how a rebellious lifestyle leads to death. It was in the Proverbs. I went upstairs and I read it, and it was like a 2x4 hitting me in the head. Like, it was just the Holy Spirit just used his word to convict me. And so I went to sleep. And then I got up the next day, and the first thing, like, it was still present with me when I woke up, like, immediately. And so I literally just slipped down out of bed onto my knees on the floor and prayed and repented, and he restored me. And by his grace, here I am decades later. And like, if you would have known me during those years, you would have thought, Brad, a pastor? Pfft, no, that's never going to happen. But God transforms lives, like, literally from dead to life. And so here I am.
Yeah. I mean, we've heard many stories of transformation. We've heard stories of steady faith as well,
yes.
Which is cool.
But yes. Yeah, I actually love the stories of people who didn't have rebellious lives all the way through. I love those stories because once we become Christians, it's easy to slip into Pharisee mode. It's easy to slip into that mode of just being good. Mm-hmm. And so when you hear testimonies from people who didn't have that visible rebellion, but they still recognized, apart from Christ, I am a sinner and I need saved by his grace. I love those stories. Yeah. I wish I had that, because there's less baggage with that. But yeah, we all have our baggage.
I think all Christians would prefer that story. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so you are our outreach and missions pastor?
Missions and Discipleship pastor.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So
let's talk about
that's
that.
my role here. Actually, can I back up and share about my family a little bit?
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay. All right. So I have a wife named Brenda of 31 years. We've been together for 31 years. We have 4 daughters, and the oldest lives in the Chicago area and is a worship leader up there, worship pastor. The second one is living in Indy, and she is working her way into event planning and management. She has a degree in that, and so she is working towards that. She has our only grandson, and so we are grandparents and love that. His name is Zayden. Then we have Molly. She is married to Jaden, and they live in Fort Wayne, and he's a pastor, one of the worship pastors at Pathway Community Church in Fort Wayne. Oh. And then our youngest daughter, Sadie, still lives with us, but she's an adult and working and making her way. So,
Yeah.
and then also my mom lives with us too. My mom is a fantastic lady. Like I said, she and my dad loved me back into the kingdom, and we're grateful to have her living with us. And when we moved to Columbia City, she then moved in with us. So she kind of has her own apartment space, but we share our house together.
Yeah.
So that's my family. My role, I love how our church loves people, and we try to do that really well. And that loving God and loving people, I mean, that's all part of the discipleship piece. So discipleship practically works out to like classes and small groups. But the point of that is not just to learn more stuff or just to hang around people. The point of that is that we get better at following Jesus. We get better at loving people and loving him with all our heart, growing deeper in the word, all of that. And then the outreach part is I have the privilege of being able to lead our church in missions and outreach. And so that's both global and local. We actually just got back from a trip. I was one of 8 who got to go to Belize just a week and a half ago. And we went to Belize and got to work with an organization, Kids Connect for Jesus, got to spend time with them and in one of the elementary schools down there, and got to do some of our VBS, our Stellar Summer Blast material in the schools with the kids down there. So that was really cool.
Yeah. We'll get back to that later.
Okay.
When did you come to First Church?
Came to First Church in 2019. Yeah, 2019. So we were here about a year and thought we were starting to get to know people, okay, this is a pretty big church. And so felt like, oh, we're starting to know more people than we don't know, at least know their faces and stuff. And then COVID hit. And so then we were, shut down for 3 months, and then everybody came back with masks on. And so it took us a while. So I feel like that set us back in our time in just being connected here. Prior to that, I was pastoring. My wife and I and our family had been at a small church in Leo for about 20 years. And I had various roles there, including doing the lead pastor role and preaching every Sunday. But our church had gone through a lot of trauma before I took that lead role. A lot of just fracturing kinds of things happening in the church. And so when I took over, it was pretty brutal. When we got there in 1998, the church was almost 400. And by the time I started preaching... Oh,
this was the first church you started at?
It was the second church I was at.
Second church.
Yeah. The first church I was just part-time.
I didn't realize you were there for that long.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, about 20 years. Started in 98, and there was about 400 people there. And through all of those fractures, by the time I started as the lead pastor in 2009, we were down to 120, 140 maybe. And so it was hard because with all that fracture, that's just hard relationally. And so we learned, I feel like God used me and the other leadership at the time. He taught us how to love each other again and how to trust each other again, how to work as a family again, gave us a real desire to reach our community. But over the 7 years I did that, we weren't gaining traction. We weren't actually doing much outreach. And so as we prayed about it, we ended up merging with another church, a larger church that was on the edge of Fort Wayne, and had real affirmation to do that. Everybody was all in with it. It was great. It was a good move for us as a church, a good move for that church. That church was ready to branch into the multiple campus thing, and I was going to be the campus pastor at our location. And then some leadership problems happened involving sin in leadership and how that got handled and stuff. It was just, I don't think anybody would disagree. It was pretty tumultuous for a year and a half. And we stayed there as long as we could, as long as we felt like we could be there with integrity. And then there came a point where we felt like we couldn't be there with integrity anymore. So
where you couldn't submit to that authority anymore.
It was partly that. It was the leadership saying, look, this is the direction we're going. The decision's been made. We're done talking about it. We're done discussing it. And so this is the direction we're going. And we just knew that we could not follow that direction. We couldn't go that route. And so I resigned, and Brenda and I had talked about it beforehand, but I resigned, and that was one of those, for me, real faith stretchers, because I like to have a plan. Mm-hmm. I'm okay with the plan being flexible. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
In fact, I think that you have to be flexible. If you're living and breathing in this world, you have to be flexible. But we had no plan. I didn't have a clue where I was going. We didn't know anything. And so right in that window of time, I was contacted by one of the pastors here, and they asked me if I was interested in a job. They had some openings, and that was when there were 2 openings here. And there was another church up in Auburn. And so we started praying and, started the process with both places. And really, as we started coming here, we just knew, like, the Lord just led us here. And we had decided, so I resigned in September, and by early November, we had decided, you know what, regardless of a job, I don't know where a job is going to land me, but for the time until we get a job, we're going to be part of First Church, because God just was so using it in our lives, because that year and a half was really was hard on us as a family. And so we're really grateful to be able to, we felt like we got a lot of healing here, and then ended up getting hired in February of 2019. So about 4.5 months or something, 4 months without a job, which was, again, that was a real stretch. One of those that once I got the job, I was like, wow, Lord, when everything's going well, sometimes it's just easy to not exercise your faith as much as you'd like to. And so when things are hard, you get an opportunity to stretch that. I was like, okay, Lord, thanks. I really do trust you. I really do. Like, that was, for me, that was a really big thing, really big moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What was I going to ask? During that transition to First Church, mm-hmm. you were attending here as a member?
Not as a member.
No, okay, sorry. Not as an official member, but you were attending services
mm-hmm. And we hadn't, we weren't doing small groups or doing any classes or anything like that, but we were just coming here on Sunday morning. And we did hop around a little bit. Like, at that point, our daughter that's now in Chicago, she helped do some worship leading at Pathway as well, mm-hmm. as well as our future son-in-law. He wasn't our son-in-law then, but we knew him already. So we went to Pathway a few times. We popped around to a few different churches, but we primarily landed here, and it was really good for our souls.
And then,
really grateful.
When did you move here?
So I started in February of 19, and we immediately started looking for a house, because Leo's about a 45-minute drive from here. And for us, living that far away and trying to, for me to try to pastor, be a part of a community and be one of the shepherds in a community, I don't want to do that from a distance. Yeah. So we looked, and it took us about 4 months, and we found something right here in town. And so we moved in June, and we've been here ever since. We love the community. We love Columbia City. Columbia City is big enough to be its own place, where Leo's great. We loved it. We were there for 20 years almost. So we loved it, but it's a smaller town, and pretty much everybody goes to Fort Wayne for most things. Yeah. And we're here, it just feels like there's much more of a sense of community. Again, nothing against Leo. It was great. We loved raising our family there, but we really are enjoying Columbia City and the community that's here.
Yeah, that's great.
What are some of your hobbies? Just a little lighter note.
Hobbies. I used to race bikes. I don't race bikes anymore, but like 10-speed style bikes, go on road racing. I used to do that when I was a young adult. That actually overlapped both my rebellious years and into my redeemed years. Love doing that. And when I I still might go out and ride every now and then, but I don't have time to train to race. But I transitioned into running, and so I do some running. I've done some races, and that I'm not competitive. I compete against myself. Let's put it that way. So I like running. love being with my family. I just love my family. We took a vacation to Gatlinburg, and that's the first time since everybody's, or most of the girls are out of the house. That's the first vacation we've done where everybody came back together and met up and did a vacation together. So I love just being with family. I don't read as much as I like, but I love reading. I have a motorcycle. I like riding my motorcycle. That's fun. I don't like, it's not the kind of motorcycle you go out and like drive 4 states from here. It's the kind you go out and ride for 30 minutes or an hour, and that's good. But I really enjoy doing that. If I had all of the resources that I needed and I didn't have family that still depended on me, I would probably take up skydiving. I have done it once. Brenda gave that to me for a birthday present one year.
She just pushed you out the plane? Or?
No, it wasn't that direct. It wasn't that deliberate, but, it made me question a little bit.
Here, I found this cheap coupon for skydiving.
Yeah. I think they use straps on their parachutes. And so love that. That was one of those just amazing things to jump out of a plane, and it was just beautiful. It was just gorgeous. You see, like, at one point I was looking straight ahead, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. There's a cloud going up past us, and then it's like, oh no, that cloud's not going up. We're going down past the cloud. Huh. So it was great, and I immediately. I would love to do just to get to the point where you could do it without an instructor, on your back and do the free fall stuff. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. So yeah, that's hobby. I like remodeling too. Over the 20 years in Leo and some of the time here, we've done some pretty extensive remodeling projects. Some we've had to hire out, but some I like remodel work. That's fun.
Huh.
Yeah, I enjoy that.
Yeah. So let's speed run a few favorite things. No thinking, just
a few favorite
quick off
things.
the back. No, we're gonna ask and you're gonna.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Favorite movie.
Lord of the Rings.
Favorite food.
Sushi.
Favorite color.
Blue.
Favorite drink.
Ooh.
Water, actually. Water is my favorite drink.
TV show.
I don't watch. Amazing Race. I really like Amazing Race. It's got that adventure piece to it, really gets people all around the world. I love travel, so it's a good one.
Song.
Probably Bohemian Rhapsody.
Scent.
Man, I don't know that I've ever thought about a favorite scent before.
It's a good icebreaker.
Probably steaks on the grill.
Wow.
That is amazing.
Gift card.
Why is that amazing?
It just is.
Okay.
What's your favorite gift card?
Some kind of restaurant that I can take my wife to.
What's the worst gift card you could receive?
Bed Bath & Beyond.
Yeah. Good speed run.
Good speed run.
Let us know if you want to see that more often. We had some feedback.
That was fun. Yeah, I've never heard that one. Is that new on me? I think
that's new.
Okay.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, that was.
It's
fun.
still we had some kinks to work out, but I think that's good.
That was fun.
Yeah.
It definitely forced me to think a little bit. Like, man, the favorite scent. I don't know.
But we could get someone to stumble, mess up their words, say something dumb. I don't know. But you could handle it.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. So let's talk about growing up a little bit.
Okay.
You said you were Mennonite growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And I did a little bit of research actually.
Okay.
Tried to find the differences. What are the differences?
Good question. So when you say Mennonite, like with most denominations, there's a pretty broad spectrum. Mm-hmm. And so all the way on the one end of the spectrum is people who are Amish or almost Amish, like where you horse and buggy and very plain clothes. On the other end of the spectrum are people who look like anybody else on the outward appearance, and that's pretty much the direction that Brenda and I both grew up. Was that kind of a home, that kind of a church. But the real distinctive that I can think of, just practical distinctive growing up, one was the church had no musical instruments in it until I was 10 or 12 probably. And then my dad was involved in church leadership. And so he helped lead the way to get to get instruments into the church, and it was a long process and took quite a while, but he led the church into that. So that was really cool. So that's one distinctive for us. And so, this is a cool thing, and it's one that I love the songs that we do in church. I have no problem, like, it's great. But Brenda and I both grew up doing 4-part harmony. And in her church, they used piano and some other instruments earlier. But in our church, it took a long time. And so we just learned how to sing. We learned how to sing parts and do all the harmonies and stuff. And so that was a cool piece of my heritage that I really like. And then another distinctive about the Mennonite church, and probably the one that it would be the most well known for, is its pacifist stance, non-resistant. So based on some of the teaching in the New Testament, the Mennonite church concluded that the best teaching is nonviolence, meaning don't go to war, you don't hurt another human being. And so that was one of the things we grew up with. I always wrestled with some of that, though, because but we call the police if we need something, and then, so we're just asking somebody else to use force. So that was one that I never quite followed. I think personal non-resistance is a very biblical thing. I think for a country, non-resistance is not. So like in our personal relationship, not being...
Don't punch me.
Yeah, don't punch you. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
That seems pretty reasonable, seems pretty biblical. But when you're talking about military and police, I think there's some room for different kinds of understandings where Mennonites would make that more blanket.
Yeah, I saw that. I also saw like children weren't supposed to be baptized in some Mennonites.
Well, yes, that would be one that's like right in harmony with where we stand as a church. Okay. Is that they would practice a believer's baptism.
Yeah.
And so, like for me, when I became a believer at age 7, then I was an eligible candidate for baptism, but they wouldn't do baptism like of infants and stuff.
Yeah.
So that was one of the things that Mennonites were known for early on, like during the Reformation, when the Lutherans and Catholics were fighting, the people breaking off from the Catholic Church were fighting. Well, the Mennonites kind of broke off from everybody, and they were called Anabaptists, them and some other groups too, but they were called Anabaptists because they were re-baptizers. So these people who had been baptized as infants were saying as adults, no, I want to make this decision for myself. And so when I get baptized, I'm choosing that. And so that was kind of the start of that in that part of church history. The Mennonites were a part of starting that Anabaptist movement I talked about.
Yeah. And then you said you grew up in Huntertown?
I did.
Correct?
I did.
Were you a Carroll grad?
I was. Carroll Chargers.
And what did high school look like for you?
That's a good question. High school, I was a pretty straight kid. I was pretty, followed the rules. I was afraid to get in trouble. As I look back, I realized that fear was a bigger part of my life, not just fear of the boogeyman, but fear of getting in trouble, fear of doing something wrong, perfectionism. So I was a manager for the football, basketball, and track teams. So, and they actually sent me to camps and stuff. So I had legit training to know how to take people's ankles and whether to do an ice whirlpool or do heat on an injury, that kind of stuff. So I helped with all of those. So
you weren't just a water boy.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Didn't make it clear.
Yeah. And it was fun because I was kind of the coach's, he had assistant coaches, but I was kind of the coach's right-hand man. He just, especially in basketball, and he was a Christian and mentored me a lot in that. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I also, this is a little known fact probably. So Carroll High School when I went there, was kind of in the middle of nowhere, kind of not much around it, but I grew up in Huntertown. And so I would walk, when I started in high school, I would walk to the elementary school and then catch a bus at the elementary school and get taken to the high school. And on my way to walking to the elementary school, there was a little store. A little convenience store, not a gas station thing, but a convenience store. And that was right when the new kind of bubble gum, it's not new now, but Bubblicious and Bubble Yum, the big chunks of gum, that was right when they came out.
Okay.
So I would buy those, and I started out with 1 or 2 packs a day. I would buy those for 25 cents a pack, and I would take them to school, and I would sell them to kids. And if they wanted a whole pack, I'd sell them a whole pack for 50 cents. Or I'd open them up and there were 5 pieces and I'd sell them for 10 cents a piece. So I'd double my money every day on the gum that I had bought. And by Christmas break, I literally was carrying a brown paper bag like you would pack a lunch in. I was carrying that around and I was buying like 20, 30, 40 packs of gum a day. And I started buying it. I worked out an agreement with the store, and I started buying some of the flavors like wild cherry and orange bubblicious. Started buying it by the case, like their case, because it made me more money that way. And some teachers hated it, and they didn't want me. Like there was no school rule against it,
Yeah.
but they hated it, and they wouldn't let me do it in their classroom. So I could sell it like right outside the door between classes, and then come in. And other people, other teachers would actually buy gum from me because they wanted a piece of gum too. And part of it, again, like you think about business and entrepreneurialism, and like there's environmental factors that go into success of business. One of the environmental factors for me was the location of the school. You know, nobody, like I'm one of the few that goes right past the store every morning. But our school lunches cost 90 cents. And so most kids came to school with $1 to buy their lunch. And so they'd buy their lunch and they'd get a dime back. So they have this dime. What do? Oh, I'm going to go buy a piece of gum. Huh. So I got the nickname as the Gum Boy. And this would have been, let's see, we got married in 92. So this was probably like mid to late 90s. Brenda and I did a vacation up to Mackinac Island. And so this would have been over a decade after I was out of school. And we saw somebody on the ferry from Mackinac Island, and I recognized her, and I'm like, hey, did you go to Carroll High School? And she's like, yeah. Were you the Gum Boy? I'm like, yep, that's me. So I was the Gum Boy. But over the course of high school, I made thousands of dollars selling gum. Yeah. It was a good gig. Paid for my first car. I mean, it was a good gig.
No way.
Yeah.
Did you have to file taxes?
No, I didn't pay taxes on that.
We can cut that out.
I don't think I hit the threshold. And then there was a kid that was a sophomore when I was a senior, and so when I graduated, he wanted to continue because he thought, I'll do that. I'll make some money off of that. Yeah. But the school made a rule. They let me finish out my career, and then they're like, no more.
So you started this freshman year, and went all the way through high school,
and no one undercutted you. Nothing?
No, nobody came in, and like I had loyal customers, and it was great. Yeah, it was great.
Huh?
Yeah, that was fun. So that was part of high school for me too.
Did you like being called Gum Boy?
I didn't care.
Yeah. Okay.
So part of it, I am on the shorter side of life, and I was always short in school. I was the shortest kid in my class, boy or girl, up until my freshman year when a kid moved into our community that was a little bit shorter than me. So I was the shortest all the time, and so I think, I don't know, partly just the way God wired me, and partly I think the short thing helped with that. Like I just very early on, like I don't care. You can think I'm short. You can call me short. You can. So it didn't really. Like it didn't matter.
How tall are you?
5'8". So I'm not.
That's
I'm not
not short.
That's short compared to a lot of people.
You were the shortest kid at 5'8".
Well, I wasn't 5'8" when I was in kindergarten. So my mom, Jordan Chappell, loved these stories. So my mom has these stories about me when I was little. So when I started kindergarten, like Mom would drive me to school, drop me off, and I would go up to the school doors, and I was not big enough to open the doors. So I would just wait. I'd just wait until another kid came along and opened the doors, and then I'd go in when they opened the doors. Because I was too small to open the doors.
What if you were late?
I just waited. Because I wasn't big. I was really small.
Dang.
Yeah. Yeah.
No. So after high school, where did you decide to go to college, or did you go to college?
Yeah. So I went out of high school. I went to Taylor Upland, and I got a scholarship there because high school came pretty easy for me. I didn't study much because it came easy, so I didn't ever learn how to study. So I got to Taylor, and I started out pre-med, because it seriously, it was not anything about helping people. It was just because I thought, oh, if I'm a doctor, I'll make money. So that literally was it.
Okay.
I mean, that fit right in with
Yeah.
the gum sales. I just want to make money. And after 2 weeks of college chemistry, I decided this is stupid. This is not for me. This is hard. And so and part of being in college, my work study program was being a manager trainer for the basketball team. So I got paid to do what I had done through high school, volunteer. Loved it. And so I switched to sports medicine and athletic training. I thought, oh, okay, I can do this. I'll work this direction, because that's not as many years of schooling as a doctor. And about halfway through the basketball season, I got to interact with Taylor. Did not have its own athletic trainer, a professional athletic trainer, just had student ones like me. But some other schools did have a staff athletic trainer. And so I got to interact with them, and I realized, oh, pretty much their primary work hours are after school and weekends, because that's when the sporting events are. And I still at least had enough sense, like, I want to have a family. I don't think that's going to be conducive to family life. And so then I was just undecided the rest of my freshman year. And my freshman year grades reflected both that I was living in rebellion, had no purpose in life, no major, my grades just tanked. If you look at my high school grades compared to my first year college grades, it was terrible. So I dropped out after a year, quit, and lived back at home, and got a job at a machine shop, and worked in a machine shop for almost 15 years, went through their apprenticeship program, became a journeyman tool and die worker. So I learned how to work machines, do stuff with metal, and really loved that. So much value in that. And yeah, really benefited from that. And then after, it was during those years when I was working at the machine shop, that's when God got a hold of my life again that night when I came home and Mom asked me to read a certain verse or a couple verses. And so the guys at the machine shop, they got to see that transformation. One of the things when I was at Taylor, sorry, Mom, you probably didn't know this part, but I was one of the two most foul-mouthed guys on my wing at Taylor. I mean, I was just, and my mouth was filled. I mean, I wasn't following Jesus, and my life reflected it. They go together. If you don't follow Jesus, your life's going to reflect that somehow. So that's part of how it was for me. And so when I was working at the machine shop, I was right in there. And so that was one of those things that God just changed. For some people who are smokers, for me, smoking was never a thing. But for some people who are smokers, sometimes when they try to quit, for some people, it's bam, it just happens, and they just are able to quit, and God gifts them with that. Other people, it's a wrestling match to quit smoking for most of their life. And for me, I think cussing is the same thing. And for me, it was one of those snap your fingers and it was just gone. So that was one of those that I had my opportunities to share with the guys at the shop a lot, because they're like, what happened to you? Because you don't talk like you used to talk. So that was kind of cool. And yeah, so I worked at the machine shop for almost 15 years, and it was during that time when my life got transformed. After it did, youth pastor at the church I was going to, side note, one of the rules about living at home still during my rebellious years, Mom and Dad were like, we know what you're doing. We know you're not living for God right now. But if you're going to live here, you have to go to church someplace every week. That just has to be the norm. Yeah. I'm like, okay, free rent. I'm good with that.
An hour a week for free rent?
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty cheap. So I was already going, and so I knew some people at the church I was going to, and so when God got a hold of me again and turned my life around, the youth pastor, even though I was early 20s at this point, the youth pastor took me under his wing, discipled me, and then asked me to start peer leading a young adult group that we had at the church. So I started doing that, and then after a few years of that, he came back to me at one point, and I mean, we had stayed in communication, even though he wasn't formally discipling me. But at one point, he was like, Brad, whatever pastors have, whatever it is that pastors have, I think you might have it. And so that started me. I'd been at the shop for probably about 6 years at that point. And that started me on a whole different journey of like praying and seeking counsel. I talked to my parents, talked to the other pastor at the church, talked to some other close friends, and people affirmed that. And I felt like God affirmed, that gifting might be there. So then I went back to school here in Fort Wayne. I was still working at the shop, but I started going to school. And it was Taylor Fort Wayne. Well, it was Fort Wayne Bible College, and then it shifted to Taylor Fort Wayne. And so all of that terrible first year of grades that I had from my freshman year at Taylor Upland, those grades actually counted then, and I actually got to use those credits so it made my grade point average lower, but
who cares?
But it made it so I didn't have to take 10 hours of college chemistry again, and so then I loved school at that point because I had a goal, had a purpose, and was living for God.
Yeah. When did Brenda come in the picture?
She came in the picture 2 different times.
Oh, shoot.
Fun story because of how God works in our lives. You can never plan it ahead of time, but you just look back and just go, wow. So when I was going to the Little Mennonite church that I grew up by, over by Carroll High School, and she was going to the Little Mennonite church that she grew up in over by Valparaiso,
Okay.
we both of our youth groups got invited down to this church in Kokomo, and they were having a youth retreat weekend, and so they invited us down there. So we met, and at that point she had a very similar growing up to me, and she also was kind of in rebellion at that point. So we met and flirted around, and she had a couple siblings that lived in Goshen, Indiana at the time. And so after that weekend, we drove halfway and met in Goshen, had a couple dates even, wrote a couple letters back and forth. But I'm telling you, I was not marriage material. She wasn't doing great in her life, and so that relationship
high school time?
She was just at the end of high school, and I was just out of high school.
Okay.
And they knew it, but they still, our youth group was 4 people. So they're like, yeah, you can come even though you're out of high school. So that's how we met. And so we dated a few times, and then that was it. So then fast forward 6 years later, and I think I had probably just started working at the machine shop at that point when I went to that little weekend retreat and met her. So fast forward 6 years later, I'm literally in this process where this youth pastor has told me that I think you might have what it takes to be a pastor. You might have whatever gifting God gives for that. I'm in that process of praying through that and discerning that. And parallel to this, my family ran this softball tournament for Mennonite teams, and teams came in from all over. They came in from Kansas and Florida and Michigan to play softball, slow pitch softball. It was a big deal. They nicknamed it, we didn't call it this, but other people nicknamed it the Mennonite World Series. So just a joke. Yeah, I know. It was always on Labor Day weekend. And so Brenda at this point had just graduated from college, and she came to, I know. I'll just give you time to process that while I take a drink.
Is there photos of this?
Yeah, my family has photos, I'm sure.
And there were the extreme Mennonites dressed.
No, not like Amish people, not like that. But like some teams came and would play in jeans and t-shirts, but other teams came in full-on uniforms. It just depended on the church and the team and who they were. And
but there was no sponsor. Amish dressed?
No.
Baseball?
No.
That'd be kind of funny.
No.
But
there were some guys that had beards that kind of looked like they could be Amish, but they were just more on that conservative end. But there were at its peak, and we ran it for 25 years. At its peak, there were 64 men's teams and 16 women's teams, and it was a double elimination tournament. So it took the entire Labor Day weekend to run the tournament through. It was fun, and our whole family, Dad did most of the organizing through the year. I helped him with it, and then our family came together and did the stuff on the weekend of. So Brenda has several siblings, and one of her brothers was playing in the tournament for a church in Goshen. She was living in Goshen because she had just graduated from Goshen College. And so she came down to watch him. And because I helped my dad through the year, Dad included my name on some of the literature. And so my life has been changing, has been being transformed since the first time I met her. I have no idea, but her life has been, she renewed her life with Christ too during that 6 years. And so she comes to watch this tournament, watch her brother play, and And her mom actually saw my name on some of the stuff, and she's like, "Didn't you date a Brad Miller at one point?" And she's like, "Yeah," but she didn't want to see me. She didn't want to see guys from that phase of her life. And so every year on the Sunday of the tournament, we had a church service at the Ball Diamond. Just had it right there. And after that church service, she and I literally came around the corner of a concession stand at the Ball Diamonds and like almost physically ran into each other.
Nice.
Which she told me in hindsight, like, it's a good thing it happened that way, because she would have, like, had she seen me from a distance, she would have gone the other way, because she didn't want to see me. She was not interested in the kind of friendship we had back then. I was not a respectful guy, and so she was not interested in that, and I don't blame her. So we just like almost ran into each other. We started talking, and literally within a minute or two of re-meeting, we started talking about how God had changed us from that first time we knew each other. And there were apologies and repentance, and I'm sorry for how I treated you, and that was mutual. And we went out on our first date that night, and we got engaged 5.5 months later and got married 5.5 months after that. So that's how I met Brenda.
Where was the date?
The date was a triple date with her parents and her brother that she had come to see play softball. Her brother was just starting to date her roommate. And so the three couples went to Cheddar's in Fort Wayne and putt-putt. That was our date.
Was it weird with her parents on the first date?
It wasn't. We were very enamored with each other, and so it was kind of like we were having our own conversation, and then those four were having their own conversation. And I'm sure we engaged some. Yeah. But they told us later, like, yeah, you guys were connecting right from the beginning.
Did you win putt-putt?
Honestly, I don't know. That is one thing. Okay, so I have a list of people to suggest for you, but one of them is Brenda.
Yeah.
Because I know you guys will often ask people. One of them's Brenda, because she's just amazing. She's great. She homeschooled our daughters. I mean, she's got stories. So yeah, she's great. But we are very competitive, and whether it's like playing volleyball, but just pick up volleyball. But you don't play just for fun. You play to win the game. You play to win.
Of course.
And so you want to have fun along the way.
Losing isn't fun.
Right. Yeah. You play to win. And so I'm sure that we both played to win, but honestly, I don't remember who won. And she is a very, very graceful loser if she happens to lose. Unless it's to me. If she loses to me, card game, sports, that's harder for her, and we're very competitive with each other.
So Brenda won is what you're saying, and
she might have. I honestly don't know. I don't remember.
We'll go with that.
Yeah.
Brenda won.
No, that's cool. And did you guys live in Leo immediately?
No. When we got married, I had just started back to school full time, and so I was working part time at the machine shop and full time student, and she was working full time. She has a social work degree, so she was doing that, and so we lived in Fort Wayne at the married student housing for the college. Oh. Lived there a couple of years till I graduated, and then we moved to over to the neighborhood by Lakeside Park, and then out further northeast off of Maple Crest Road, and then out to Leo. So we kind of worked our way out north all the time.
And then to Columbia City.
And then to Columbia City. Yeah, so we kept going north, and then took a jaunt out this way.
Yeah. So we're here now. Let's talk about some of the cool things you've experienced here at First Church.
Some of the cool things.
I guess what drew you here? Because you said you were comparing with a different church in Auburn at the time. Mm-hmm. What drew you here?
Felt like there was a lot of life here. Felt like there's a lot of enthusiasm and yet a groundedness too. Like sometimes you can get a lot of enthusiasm without grounded, or you can get grounded without enthusiasm, but it felt like both were here. God used during those months where I wasn't employed here, God used Johnny's sermons and Holly's things. You know how Holly will, like between songs, like she'll do every now and then she'll just throw in a little couple minute scripture thing. Okay. Like God just used those things to heal us and as a part of our healing from the trauma of the past church. And so it was just good. And then when we like started looking at doctrinal stuff, like things just lined up with how we believe, how we fit. And as we went through the interview process, the other church was much more of a seeker focused church, and that's just not.
What do you mean by that?
Their emphasis seems to be, it's not that they don't want to disciple people, but they want to use big things. In general, a seeker church will want to use big things, big events to draw people in and be more of an attraction model instead of like having the people of the church grow, be discipled, be rooted in his word, and love God through prayer and worship, and go out into the community and bring people in.
Would you say that's what Fall Fest is, though?
Fall Fest is one thing that would be more like that, but it's one thing that we do. It's a very small piece of what we do.
It's once a year.
Yeah. Picture doing that all of the time. So to have a Fall Fest that is complemented by people being out in the community and loving people and loving their neighbors and inviting people, that's fantastic. But if it's just, hey, let's send flyers out and let's do advertisements and let's advertise, hey, we're having the next, again, sorry, this probably sounds really negative about churches that do that. There are good people who love Jesus who are in churches like that. But that's not a style that fits me.
Yeah.
And you can tell I don't prefer that style.
Yeah.
First Church, I feel like we fit at First Church. It doesn't make sense to go to a church where you don't fit, where your philosophy is different.
Fair. Yeah.
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 And I guess, what are your roles here, your day-to-days? And
So I get to be a part of leading the small group leaders.
Yeah.
So just staying in touch with them and asking, like today I was communicating with one of them. And I'm like, how can I pray for you this week? And so just doing that kind of personal connection with them, resourcing them, doing training for them, planning out classes and groups sorts of things. So that's one end of it. Actually, when I started, Holly she was the one who was over all of the women's Bible studies, but she needed to move out of that area. So the women's Bible studies are under me too now, just as a part of discipleship, because I want to see people discipled, whether it's men or women. And so those are under me now. So working with the leaders of those groups as well. And I love that. I love it's such a privilege to get to know people and to be welcomed into their lives. When you know people and you love them, and you can't do this for 1,000 people, but you can do it for a smaller group of people. You can get to know them, and when somebody decides to open up and share something personal with you, something they're struggling with, something that was a real high or a real low, lows are the harder ones usually, and when people do that, like it's such an honor to be a part of people's lives like that. When you get invited into a family or a household when like there's issues going on and they're not getting along and they want you to help, like that's just such an amazing thing. And so that care aspect is a little bit of what I do too, like helping out, visiting people. I do a little bit of that, again, not a ton, but some of that. And it's just such an honor to be a part of this First Church family. It really is. Honestly, that's such a cool thing. It's one of the things that I just love about being here.
Yeah. So you handle some small groups, discipleship, caring. Yeah. You haven't in a while, but teach occasionally. Yeah.
Yeah. I love doing that when I get a chance to. I'm not the one to do it every week, but I love doing that on occasion as well.
Yeah. How does that kind of get decided when you do?
Like when Johnny was here, that was really just up to Johnny. That was his call, and he would ask me if he wanted me to fill in on a Sunday or something. So I would guess that it'll be the same when the new lead pastor comes. It'll just be when they, and again, some would do it more like, hey, I'm going to be gone this weekend, and could somebody fill in for me, something like that. Some do it with a strategic piece in mind, like to say, hey, we want to hear a different voice on this subject. We want to have the congregation hear different voices on this. So let's do a team thing on this or something.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
can be used intentionally that way.
Different
Yeah.
aspects,
Yeah. Again, different philosophies. I don't think there's a right or a wrong, but there's a different philosophies to those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Who do you work closely with through your days?
I work closely with Rob. Rob is a fantastic boss and executive pastor. Love working with him. He's been a real blessing to me personally and to our church family. Really grateful to have him. And then the rest of the staff too. There's other staff members like Mindy Hoffman's been here. I mean, when I think of other people that would be really cool for people to get to hear from, Mindy Hoffman has been at the church for decades and loves the church and serves the church so well. So I interact with her a lot, interact with Holly and Debbie and Penny, those other three pastors that we have here. I mean, because it's those three and Rob and I at this point right now. And so just outstanding staff. The ladies in the front office are amazing. Holly Schrader doing Kids PM. Like, there's just so many dynamic people here. I love working with the staff here. It's a really healthy staff, I think.
Yeah, of course.
You touched a little bit earlier on your guys' trip to Belize.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. There were 8 of us that went. It was a mixed group as far as ages go. So there was 4 teenagers and 4 adults. And I didn't have any of my kids go on this, but the other 3 adults had those 4 kids were their kids. And so we went with a group called Kids Connect for Jesus. And we got connected to them through Jamie D. That's another one. Heather Ward is another one on the global outreach team. Have them in, talk to them. Sorry, I've just booked out the rest of your year. Right? Kids Connect for Jesus, they are all about sharing the gospel and making disciples. Share the gospel, make disciples. And then they use all these different means to do it. They're really focused, but they're really creative in how they get that done. So what we did was just one of the ways that they work down there. We went in to an elementary school, and basically the teachers let us have the classrooms for these 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. The 7th and 8th were in the morning, and the 5th and 6th graders were in the afternoon. Now, again, that's not what they call them, but that's kind of our equivalent. Yeah. And we did our Stellar VBS program with them, and it was just amazing being in the classroom, being able to teach the kids about Jesus, being able to see the team in action, like see these people. Some of them I didn't know as well when we went on the trip, especially some of the teenagers. I didn't know them, but they were just amazing. So getting to see our church family flourish in a setting that we're not usually in, getting to interact with the kids and adults in Belize was great, and getting to see this organization. And I hope there's some trips in the future that we can do with them. Belize is an English-speaking country, so that makes it a lot easier for us to go, and it's a pretty safe place.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of need there. A lot of people know about Jesus already, but there's a lot of need there too. So
yeah, you can hear about Jesus but not understand as well, which is huge.
Yeah,
that's a cool opportunity.
Yeah.
Global outreach team. What is that?
That is the team that is that's part of my responsibility here is to lead that team, and that team is responsible then for what we do as far as outreach goes. So that team has helped craft and shape, and again, that team existed before I got here, but that team helped craft the idea that that globally we want to be really focused, because there's thousands of organizations we could partner with globally. What we have decided to do is to aim our global outreach stuff, our international outreach, at unreached people groups like here. If you want to know about Jesus here in Columbia City and you don't know about Jesus, you can probably figure it out. You can probably ask around, and somebody will be able to say, well, go to that church, or go to this church, or go talk to this person. I know they read the Bible. Or you can just go to Walmart and buy a Bible. There's a way you can figure out how to know about Jesus. But when we're talking about unreached people groups, these are places in the world where they don't have any of that. There's no churches. There's no Christian witness. There's no Bibles available, or so minimal that people wouldn't even know that they exist there. So we've decided to aim as much as we can towards unreached people groups. Then the Global Outreach team also, we worked together on this to figure out, but locally, we want to be really broad. We want to just try to help lots of organizations here locally, lots of organizations that, again, that align with our missions and values. So we help places like a Hope Center and Mission 25, and we partner with them, and it's really good for us too to be partnered with places like that. Salvation Army helps a lot of people, and we have, again, our values align with them, and so they want to share the gospel, we want to share the gospel, so we use them. So that's what the Global Outreach team does, and that's Jeremy Freeman and Heather Ward and Jamie D and Austin and Nancy Ferguson.
Yeah. What do you guys kind of look for in a local organization?
Good. That would be an organization that, again, that aligns with our mission and values. That's really the primary thing, and that there's a need. We don't want to give people money or send people to go volunteer someplace where, well, no, we don't really need anything right now. We're all good. So we look for places that are about, kind of like what Kids Connect for Jesus talked about, like share the gospel and make disciples. Share the gospel and make disciples. If that's what a group wants to do, and they do it through helping people who are in transitional life places and they need help with learning how to rehab out of drugs, we want to do that. If they're in jail, we want to do that. We want to partner with people who are doing jail ministry. If it's people in crisis pregnancy and they want to love people through that and share the gospel and make disciples, then we want to partner with them. So that's kind of the criteria we use for that.
Yeah. Kind of a different topic. And we may not talk about this, but you have a bar ministry?
I wouldn't call it a bar ministry per se. Yeah. Cause it's really like, that's kind of my own time. That's not work for me.
Yeah, of course.
That's just me. So I go into a local bar about once a week, and I just hang out there. And when I went in, like, again, I don't go in with open Bible and, hey, let me read this to you and let me tell you about Jesus. I just go in, hey, how are you tonight? And start talking with people. And over the I couldn't go in during COVID because you couldn't go in any place during COVID. Yeah. But since COVID, seriously, it's like family there. Like they're good friends at this bar, and I love them. And I think they love me too. Like, it's really an amazing thing. I've built good relationships with them. And part of that is, so when I come in now, they know me, and I sit down with people, and they might ask me how my day was. And sometimes I'll talk about my motorcycle ride, and sometimes I'll talk about how good or bad the Colts are doing. And sometimes I'll talk about my family, and sometimes I talk about Jesus. Like, they're my friends. And so when they ask me about it, Jesus is part of my life, just like Brenda's part of my life. And so sometimes I talk about Jesus, and they hear that. So one time I remember I was talking about Isaiah 55, because it had just really impacted me, and how God's thoughts are higher than our thoughts. And so I'm like, you guys know, like, I don't try to preach to you guys, but like, this is, you asked me, so could I read this to you? And they're like, yeah, please. So I read it to them and explained what had been hitting me, what had impacted me about how God loves so differently than what we love. And like, had great conversation around it. Like, you could just see some seeds being planted. And that's like, I can't save anybody. I have no ability to do that, but I can point them to Jesus. So we had great conversation. There were about 6 of us there at the table that night. The next week I come back in, and one of the people that was at that table happened to be at a different table. And after I'd been there a little while, he was like, Brad, come over here. Will you share with them what you shared with us last week? That same thing, will you share that with these guys? And so I did. And so that was kind of one of those turning points. And so now we talk about the Bible and God quite a bit. And
nice.
Some of my friends are, one of my friends, well, actually 2, have come to church here, which, again, getting them to come to church, that is not the point. The point is, I want friends. I want to love people. That's the point. They are my friends. If they decide they want to come to church, great.
And you'll invite them. Like, yeah.
Right. If it fits,
You're not
I will invite
anti
them.
don't come to
No,
church.
not at all. But I don't ever want anybody to think, oh my goodness, friends of mine at the bar, if you ever see this, I don't want any of you to think that you're my friends because I want you to be a certain way.
Yeah.
I do want you to know the love of God. I do. But that's just because I think it's the best thing ever. So just like you would tell somebody, if you found the best steak at the best restaurant, you would tell somebody about that best steak because you're excited about it. So I tell you guys about Jesus. I hope you know that's how I am. And so, yeah, I'm not anti inviting them to church.
Yeah.
But typically the people that we know that don't yet know or love Jesus, inviting them to church isn't the best step. Let's love them. Just love people. And that should be true. Like, we should love each other. We should love people that we run into at Walmart. We should love people at the bar. Like, that's just how we should be known. I was thinking about that actually on the trip. What if we would become known, not because we advertise it, not because we are doing a social media campaign, but because of how the individuals of First Church of God live their lives? What if we would become known as the church that loves people that are outside the church?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that, what if we're behind the curve and there's other churches in Columbia City that are already doing that, and we just join in with that, and the churches in Columbia City that preach Jesus, that preach the gospel and want to make disciples, if the churches in this town become known as churches who love people outside the church,
Yeah.
that would change our community. And so, yeah, so I love my friends. I love them, and I'm grateful for them. I'm grateful. I actually bumped into one of them today outside the bar, and it was great to see her. Like, just, we're friends, and that's good.
Yeah. I mean, Jesus didn't hang out with just his disciples, and
Right.
Like,
And he
hung out with everyone. Yeah.
And the funny thing is, a common question that I get from bar friends that are new bar friends, like when I'm first meeting somebody, a common question that I get, not everybody, but it's not uncommon for somebody to ask me, does your church know? Like, is it okay that you come in here? And I find that really interesting, because what that implies is that their experience has been like Jesus' experience with the Pharisees, where the Pharisees hated it that he hung out with people that weren't the religious people of the day. They hated that. Mm-hmm. And that's part of why they wanted him out of there, because he did not honor them the way they thought that they should be honored. And so I think, yeah, why don't we go places wherever we go? And again, going into a bar is not for everybody. It's not for every Christian. But whether you're going to work, whether you're going to school, whether you're going to a bar, whether you're going to Walmart, let's just love people.
Yeah.
Love people wherever we go, with no strings attached. And then when the time is right, absolutely I want to tell somebody about Jesus, because he's the best thing that ever happened to me. Why wouldn't I tell somebody about that? But again, I want to respect them. They have the freedom to do what they want with that.
Yeah. No, that's cool.
Yeah.
It's definitely interesting to hear that perspective.
Yeah.
That's not really like a known thing, is it?
No, because again, I don't want any of my friends to feel like I'm doing it with ulterior motives. I just want to go in there because I love my town, I love the people of my town, and I love getting to know people.
Yeah.
And again, sharing the best thing that happened to me. Yeah, that happens at points, and I definitely want to do that, and I would definitely want to see them grow there. But that's not why I love them. Mm-hmm. I love them because God loves me. God loved me when I was that stupid, rebellious teenager that was essentially flipping him off, telling him, I don't want anything to do with you. I'm going to live my life my way. And he loved me anyways. And so why wouldn't I try to love people that way, whoever I come in contact with?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very simple.
Yeah.
It's not something we do well.
No, it's not. Yep. It's not. And believe me, and I've told them, like I tell people here, like, I'm going to blow it. Like, I'm going to blow it. If you know me very long, I'm going to offend you. I'm going to wound you. I'm going to sin against you somehow. Because the brokenness that's still in me, I mean, yes, Jesus has redeemed me, but the brokenness that's still in me is it's real. It's not a pretend thing. It's not a facade. And so that's going to spill out. Just ask my family. They will tell you. The ones who are closest to me feel it the most. That's where it spills out the most. But if you know me very long, I'm going to offend you or sin against you somehow. And my bar friends know that too. And so I tell them, like, hey, if I get out of line, tell me. And hopefully I'll respond well to you. And hopefully I'll repent and make it right. But I'm a broken human being. So.
Yeah, I love that. You've seen all of these, you said?
I've listened to all of them.
Yeah, sorry, listen.
Yeah, no worries.
So do you know what's coming?
Is this the last question? Are we there?
I believe we're there.
Okay.
What is your dream vacation?
My dream vacation. So I talked with, knowing I was coming on the show, I talked with Brenda about this and like kind of processed through what is it? Yeah.
Not hers, it's yours.
No, I know. I was
Okay.
just processing for myself. And so, of course, there's the things like I would love to go to Israel and see all the sites. That would be great. I would love to go to Rome and Corinth and Ephesus and see all the sites. Would love to. Excuse me. But if I had to do a dream vacation with the no limits like you guys talk about. Remember how I talked about being a bike racer back in the day?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we still follow the Tour de France. The big 3-week bike race, over 2,000 miles every year. It happens in July every year. It's in France, happens over the course of 3 weeks. And it is an amazing spectacle, like just an amazing spectacle. So for Brenda and I to be able to go to France, and I would probably want to go, I mean, again, there's no limits. Like, let's go for 6 weeks. So we're there for a week ahead of time, kind of get acclimated to the countryside, and then kind of follow the tour on around the country as it goes around the country. Watch different parts of the stages. There are tour companies that do this thing where you can, like, either a day or the entire race. I'm not that good of a bike rider anymore. Like, I'm not in shape enough to do this. But there are some, because the race doesn't start till about noon in France, and then they'll ride like 80, 90, 130 miles, depends on the day, depends on what they're doing. But they'll let regular people like me ride the course at like 7 or 8 in the morning. Like, you can start riding the course. So you're out of the way before they ever start the race. So maybe some of the days I would get to go ride some of the course. I would absolutely want to see the climb called Alpe d'Huez. Like, check that out if you've never heard of it. It's like got, I don't know, 18 or 21 switchbacks on it. It is. Oh, wow. It is a brutal mountain climb.
That doesn't sound fun.
It is brutal, but it's beautiful at the same time. So I'd want to go see some of those mountain stages and see them race there. I would absolutely, every year it finishes now on the Champs-Élysées in Paris under the Arc de Triomphe. I mean, you can see all of that. I would want to go see that. And so part of our vacation, then, if we go there a week before the race starts, and following it around, like, we get to see the Mediterranean. We'd spend a couple days there, see the Alps and the Pyrenees. All of that would just be beautiful. And then for the last, like, 3 days of the race, fly all of the rest of my family over, daughters and any husbands that might be there at some point, fly them over so they could see the last few days of the race with us. And then we'd have like another week together to spend in France.
That was very thought out.
Yes, it was.
I love it.
It was, because I've been listening. I've been paying attention. And I thought that's one thing that I've always wanted to go see the tour. So, like, yeah, the ancient historical sites would love that too. But the tour, that's just, that's something.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. And then we've been asking people this here and there. You've mentioned some people, but who should we see soon?
So those names I mentioned, also my mom, Sue Miller, she turned 90 this summer, and she is an amazing woman. And so it's one of those, like, does she contribute in a leadership way to First Church family? No. But she prays and she loves people, and yeah, she's pretty amazing. So she would be one. Brandon Smead just started a men's small group. He's got an amazing testimony, amazing life. God's done great stuff in him. So he's just fun. He's just got lots of stories. He's fun to talk to. I think, again, my coworker, all those people that I mentioned through the podcast, I would recommend.
Yeah, and
those folks.
Hitting back on, you said your mom's not in leadership or anything.
Yeah.
You don't we don't want just
I know.
staff,
I
pastors,
know.
whatever. If you're interested or know someone, please reach out, because our goal is not just to like get to know
Yes.
people that are up front and
Good.
whatever. Now that's cool. I think that's very helpful. But to grow our community, I mean, it starts with congregation and even outside of our own First Church congregation, but the church.
Yes. Community. Another one I had thought of earlier. Sean Ellis. Sean Ellis is outstanding.
Mission 25.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. She'd be another good one.
Yeah,
Get to know our
absolutely. Yep. I believe, I think the next episode after you is another pastor in the community.
Oh, really? Cool.
Which would be very neat. I'm not sure if we'll have one in between or not, but yeah.
I love that. Because we got to recognize we are the church.
Yeah.
Broad, not
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
our
It gets
local.
confusing saying we're God's church and
Yeah.
First Church of God.
Yes,
but,
it does. It does for sure.
No. We are the church. This isn't a First Church thing.
Yeah,
So
that's cool.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I love it. Thanks for having me on. Thanks so much for what you're doing. Again, I think it's a really cool thing. Helping. I know people in our community and in our church better because of what you guys have done, and I love it.
Well, thank you.
I've grown in
Yeah, thank you.
appreciation for people because of what you guys are doing. Yeah, it's
Yes.
been really cool.
Well, and thank you for your kind words and your time and
Yeah.
vulnerability tonight. It's been good. If you guys want to connect with Brad, reach out, please. Brad at fcog.church.
Yep.
Or comment, reach out. Unfortunately or fortunately, part of being on our show is you may get connected to people.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. Well, sweet. Thank you
Missions and
guys.
Discipleship, baby.
Yep. Thank you guys for listening or watching, and we will see you next time. Peace.
Peace.
Grace and peace.